You don't have to leave ministry to have some refreshing. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just wake up 15 minutes more earlier than the kids do,
Yeah.
and go find you a quiet spot, sing a hymn or sing a song to the God, and then get in the Word and read His Word. And so I would tell the younger me, what my old senior high Sunday school teacher, don't be a knucklehead just because things are hard. You gotta just trust God in it. He's still there. Just lean on Him more and stop letting the circumstances rob you of that opportunity to lean on Him more.
Hey there, welcome to the Two Pastors Unplugged podcast. I'm Rick Probst. What a pleasure to talk with this amazing young man. He is a young man. We were just joking about boomers right before we went live. Well, I'm the only boomer. I think I'm the only boomer in this building. Pastor Nate Browning, lead pastor of Calvary Baptist Church in Hiawassee. Pastor, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Rick?
I'm doing great. Way to answer the call to Hiawassee, one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
Oh yeah, Lord had to twist my arm really hard.
I did a little background on you. I do with every guest, but
Sure.
You actually lived, and I don't know how long, but you lived in Asheville, which is another amazing place. Were you
Yes,
born
sir.
and raised in Asheville or what?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina, and moved to Yulee, Florida, Amelia Island area. That's where I met my wife, and then Hiawassee, Georgia. So, yes,
Wow.
sir.
So when you were in Asheville, and I love the story, and maybe we'll get into this in the podcast here in just a few. But
Sure.
there was a brother Tad that was your youth pastor that was very influential in your life as
Yes,
you were
sir.
growing up as a teenager.
Mhm.
And mentors, good mentors are hard to find, right? But you got a good one,
Oh
a
yeah.
great one. Look at you, as I look at your. You've been at Calvary for, I think, 10 years. If the new math is correct, you've been about 10 years, and the church before where you pastored about 10 years or so. The longevity for you and churches is unheard of. We may get into that as well, but let's talk about this.
Sure.
Okay. Asheville is so beautiful. A
Yes.
lot of tourists, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yes, absolutely.
what do you call people from Asheville? I guess homegrown Ashevilleans. How do
Yeah,
they?
pretty much.
I don't think I could deal with the tourism. It's such a beautiful place. I would
Mhm.
put a sign out that says, unless I was a pastor, and then I would say, hey,
Right.
come on in. But I'd say, stay in Atlanta, stay home. How
Right.
did you guys deal with that?
Well, the tourism, Asheville it seems small, but it's so spread out with the mountain community surrounding it. So I grew up, my home was in Candler. That's where my family, that's where I was raised. And so that
Okay.
was outside of the city limits. So you get to a retreat a little bit, because if you go outside of Asheville to outside the city limits to the surrounding area, Candler, Canton, Waynesville, some of those areas,
Yeah.
it's not, the tourists aren't there. They're
Okay.
they're in the city. They're in some of those main areas, Biltmore Estate, Biltmore
Right.
Village.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you do have a little bit of a retreat area where you live, because they're not coming outside of that. So, but and honestly, it's not too bad with the tourism, that you see there in Asheville. It seems like it would be overflowing, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Some of that you also kind of learn when to go into town and when not to go into town, depending on the time of year and the festivals and things.
Yeah. The sad news though, they did get whacked with this whole flood. Do you still have family
Yeah.
there?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have family. Fortunately, all my family was safe. They live on the outskirts, more northern side of Asheville now, and just kind of outside of that area. So they were all safe, but we do know many people, especially in the church I grew up in, that were affected. And of course, the church I grew up in, they have a disaster relief agency called Hearts with Hands. And they're located right there in Asheville, and they already
Hmm.
have people hands on the ground, feet on the
Wow.
ground, ready to go, big distribution warehouse where they collect things to help people. So the ministry there was already set up. And through that, you hate to see the devastation, but through that, you saw a lot of people actually coming to churches and giving churches an opportunity to physically help, but then also to spiritually help. Because when you go through so much devastation, you start to think about, that that end of life scenario and eternity. And
Right.
so there were quite a few people who placed faith in Christ as a result of the devastation. So,
I wonder if
um,
that was the ministry that I was watching a lot of YouTube then just to check to see how, because in fact, we were going to go, my two, I have three boys, but two of the three boys, we go camping every year
okay.
and in a cabin. And I was just about to pull the trigger on
Mm.
a cabin 2 weeks before it happened. I just
Oh,
hesitated.
wow.
I'll just
Yes.
wait. I'll just wait a little bit. I definitely make sure this is where we want to go. It's a beautiful area. And then the
Right.
flood happened. But after that, I started following to see how the people were and was just amazed at the devastation. But there was
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there were many ministries, but there was a ministry that stood out. And yeah, they did stuff like that. I mean, they were helping the people, and it was a 24/7 deal. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
as long as they needed, and I guess they still need help.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There's several places around there. That's the problem sometimes after devastating events like that is over time, the ones that aren't living there or in it, we kind of tend to forget about it just because
Yeah,
time passes.
yeah,
But we were just up there this past weekend, my family and I visiting with mom and sisters just briefly, and you drive through there, and they've cleaned up a lot, but there's still families. There's still families in need. The fortunate thing is not as many are displaced, but there's still quite a bit displaced.
yeah.
So there's still definitely a need.
Wow, I'm so glad your family's good, and
Yes, sir.
thank God for the Christian ministries that are there, the churches,
Yeah.
and those that have come in. And you're right, isn't it? It's kind of like, isn't it? Like missionaries. You remember
Hmm.
the missionaries when they come in, and
Right.
then life happens. They go on about their ministry in whatever country, and you guys
Yeah.
support a number of ministries, a number of missions in other countries. But then you kind of out of sight, out of mind. So it's almost
Yeah.
like it's not on YouTube, it's not on the news, it's not in the press. So
Right.
it's like, oh, I forgot all about such and such. Yeah,
Right.
it's amazing. Nathan Browning is the lead pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Hiawassee. If you've never been to Hiawassee, oh my gracious. We went
Yes.
years ago, Lake Chatub. Somebody had a cabin there that in our church back then.
Mhm.
I was pastoring, I was a lead pastor of a church, and there was a couple and their family had a cabin and a huge boat on Lake Chatub. And they said, hey, you
Right.
can stay at the cabin, just relax and take the boat out. And oh my gracious, that place is
It's beautiful.
unbelievable. Um,
Yes.
well, what have you and you with your five kids, and I
Mhm.
think your wife's name is Beth. Yeah, Beth and your kids. What do you guys do for what do you do for relaxation up there?
Well, the parsonage right across the street from the church, our neighbor has 22 acres of land
Hmm.
that's I think it's called conservationship, where it can't be developed, nothing can be on it.
Yeah.
So we're young, but we're old souls. Our favorite thing to do is we sit on the back porch and watch the deer and turkey and drink coffee, and the kids run around and play in the backyard. We have 12 chickens, well 11 now. We have 11 chickens, and so that's what we do for fun. You kind of got to
Hey,
adapt to the mountain life. You can't
yeah.
need to run to the store every day. You got to. That's our relaxation.
Hey, that you're ministering to me now. I mean, you're
That's
you're
right.
hitting me right in the heart. I'm there. That's so
That's where we
awesome.
like to be. Yeah,
Well, let's talk
absolutely.
about this and I brought this up. Here you are, the church you were. I don't think I did. I write it down. Is it Liberty Baptist Church in Callahan? Is that where you were?
We were yes, sir. 7 years I served. I really grew there. That was kind of right out of Bible college, and then I did some Bible Institute work there. But that was where I served, kind of as an assistant to our pastor. As an official staff position, but led singing, taught Sunday school, preached, filled in, helped with ministries, and
You
was there
did
for seven
everything.
years.
You did
Yeah, yeah.
everything.
I helped the pastor. That was it. That was what we did, and he it was always kind of the joke, an official assistant pastor position, but assistant to the pastor, that kind of, you know, the little inside joke there to keep, between us. But he would always say, "This is training him to be the pastor, to be a pastor. So that was where we were for 7 years. Did a little deputation work, thought we were going to Canada to start churches, and the Lord shut that door. And then a year and a half later, Hiawassee, that's where we got introduced. But yeah, Callahan, Florida for 7 years. Yes, sir. And then here for 10 this October.
Well, see, it's amazing to me, and you were on staff there in Callahan, but you stayed
Mhm.
7 years, and then
Yes, sir.
here you're 10 years. The longevity, I'd like to say that's normal. That's not normal.
No, sir.
Whether it's the church saying "see ya" or it's the pastor
Right.
looking for the pot of gold somewhere else.
Right.
But the longevity on both, what is it that's kept you there besides your sensitivity to what God wants in your life? But
Sure.
what is it that keeps you there at Calvary in Hiawassee?
Well, I mean, now it's changed over the years. So being here, 10 years, now it's the families that we've invested in so much time. It's
Mm,
anytime you think of quitting, because I think every pastor at any point in their ministry thinks of quitting. And honestly,
sure.
the attacks of the enemy, you have a good Sunday, you get up Monday morning and sometimes you can feel discouraged. You go, you know, that guy that posted on Facebook, 2 counties over had 300 people and we only had, 105. And,
Right.
and you start comparing. So I've tried to, right now, what's keeping me here is the families. We've invested in families. We've seen salvations. We've seen families growing. We've seen kids. I would say 40% of our church is under the age of 25.
Wow.
So
That's
we got a lot
great.
of kids, a lot of big families
Yes.
with a lot of kids and teenagers. And, you just kind of go, well, Lord, I want to see what you've got for me to invest in them for the future. So that's one of the things that's kept keeping me here now. In the beginning, when we first got here, I kept hearing two or three different things. I would hear most pastors, this is my first official pastorate. Most guys, I think statistically last 2 to 3 years in their first
Yeah.
pastorate.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a little stubborn. I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want to be a statistic. That's been my thing. I just if the Lord's going to move me, fine, but I'm not just going to quit. So that was one thing. Another thing is my pastor who invested a lot in me at Liberty, so not Brother Tad at Trinity. He was my youth pastor who really kind of helped me and paved the way. But at Liberty, Brother Dalton Robertson, he told me when I first got here, he said ministry's measured in decades, not years. He said if you give up before that first decade, you can't even measure that hardly. And
Wow.
that's always stuck with me. So I always tell the church, I said I've got this October, now we can look back and see the first decade, and that makes me excited to see what's going to happen in the next decade if the Lord will allow me to stay here. So those are kind of the three main factors. In the beginning, stubbornness, not going to be a statistic, going to see what God's going to do in this decade. And then now there's so many families here that anytime I think about leaving, I think, man, that's can't do it. And I don't think about leaving as often. When you stick somewhere for so long, now it's one of those things where if we leave, the Lord's going to have to move us. Like it's going to have to be obvious. There's just too many things happening here that we've invested in, and we're seeing the Lord use us, and it's just awesome.
Hey, we hear that you're loving Two Pastors Unplugged, so we want to remind you to hit the subscribe button right there on the bottom and give this video a thumbs up. And if you're an audio only, we love you. Thank you for listening to us. And you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. And there's a new episode that drops every Tuesday morning, so look out for that. And hey, thanks for listening. Now, back to the show. I love that you had at least two, but as you just mentioned, two folks that, Brother Tad and then the other pastor really, I mean, that's just wisdom what he said about, anybody can leave the first few years or whatever, or decade, but
Right.
that's just wisdom to say. I mean, he could have said, hey, when it gets tough, just get out of there, find you a nice
Right.
cushy pastorate somewhere and just write books for a living and enjoy yourself. But he was,
Yeah,
but he was such, and that's nothing against any pastors that write books, but
sure.
but the thing is that here, that's gold that he gave you. So here's two things that just really sticks out to me.
Mhm.
you had great mentors in your life that
Yes,
encouraged
sir.
you, gave you vision, told you the truth, right?
Yeah,
Didn't
absolutely.
didn't water it down, and told you, hey, there no unrealistic expectations. This is what's going to happen. This is how you handle it. Boom. But on the other hand, you were mature enough, we're mature enough to say, I'm going to let somebody speak into my life that I respect,
Oh,
and
sure.
I'm going to walk it out instead of saying, hey, I can do this on my own. I don't
Right.
need somebody, some old boomer, just to, I'm young, I'm vibrant, I got a calling, I got a message. Look out,
Yeah.
world.
No, can't
Way to go. Speak to that
can't
a
do
little
that.
bit. How did you do that?
Well, honestly, I've always had, well, so early in my life, so my father passed away when I was 16.
Mm,
And he passed away had a massive heart attack 3 days before I was supposed to go on my first ever missions trip overseas.
mm,
And my pastor, Dr. Ralph Sexton Jr. at the time, he asked me, you know, uh, it's up to you if you want to go. I'd encourage you to go. Your dad sacrificed for you to go, but I know it's right there within that time frame. So that very first missions trip, that pastor taught me ministry is important. It's not more important than family. I talked with my mom about that. Obviously, I was still at home. I just turned 16. And we all agreed and prayed about it and just decided, this is what the Lord's called me to. This is what he provided for. It's 1 week. It's not, forever. So that kind of, I think, paved the way and of learning that, okay, my pastor has some wisdom in that direction there. He knows, okay, just because life is difficult or just because things happen, ministry still has to happen. And it needs to happen, and God wants to use people. And it's often in those times when you realize that God gives you the strength and then you can't take credit for it.
mm,
So that's when I started to really kind of focus, and I think I had to mature very early in that situation. Had two sisters and a little brother, mom at home, and she never remarried, so we all just helped each other as best as we could. And then there was my mom taught me, many years later before I went to Bible college, the verse that teaches you that there's safety in a multitude of counselors.
mm.
A wise man's going to hear instruction. And that's what I want. I want to be a wise man. I don't think that I'm a you say writing, writing books and having a cushy job. Nobody's going to want to read any books I write. I can tell you that. That's not going to happen. So I just want to be a faithful man.
Yeah.
That was something that was on my dad's epitaph that was etched on his tombstone because he wasn't a
Mm,
pastor. My dad was not a ministry man by what we would label a ministry man. He coached church league softball for 13 years, faithful to drive the church van, pick up shut-ins. But on
mm.
his epitaph is that Corinthians 4 passage that says, moreover is required in a steward that a man be found faithful. So that's been so those two things, faithfulness, teachability, wisdom. And where does that come from? Well, you got to be teachable. You got to learn. And, I've been in ministry 17 years and I still, every week I go, I still have not figured this thing out. I gotta, call my pastor friends, shoot them a text, say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or, "What do you think about this passage?" And I'm trying to really see how does this apply to our church or how does this apply to our lives. So I think that's just keeping that teachable spirit. I think is extremely important. So
See, I think you have a book in you. You just read it.
there you go.
I am moved and envious by the stock that you come from. Here's a father that he was in the ministry. I mean,
Well,
he drove
yeah,
shut-ins and coached softball and touched people's lives. And
right.
wow. And then a
Yeah,
mother that sends you off with. I mean, that's an amazing scripture. Yeah, there is wisdom in a multitude of counselors, and
yes, sir.
that's been your moniker. That's your strong point. So I'm going
Yes, sir.
to ask you. Okay, here you are. I don't know
Okay.
how old of a man you are. To me, you're young.
Yeah.
But let's go back. I don't know, 10, 15 years. What would you say to the now? Here you are. You've gone through so many challenges and have many victories. And,
Amen.
a couple of things you're like, gosh, I would do something different. If you could say to the young Nate,
Okay.
what would you say? Maybe I should say what decade, right? Maybe I should say, how about before Calvary? If you could say to the Nate that's getting ready to lead Calvary Baptist Church in Hiawassee, what would you say to that Nate?
I would say, I would probably say focus more on God's goodness and quit letting the hardships take up so much of your mental space.
Mm,
Because that, there right now we look back and we talk about the victories and like, man, the Lord's done so many great things. Like, the past few weeks, before we went live, we had two young people get saved this past weekend, and man, it's so
wow.
awesome to see
Yes.
that, and to be a part of that. And we've had several that's gotten baptized this year already, and we're not a multi-hundred church, so just those little victories. And but it's easy to look at that in those moments, and sometimes time goes by, kind of like with the devastation, and you forget about the people that need help. Well, the same
Mm,
thing, you forget about the victories, and then you're in the thick of it, and you're in the valley, and you're just, oh man, somebody else needs to do this. This is difficult, and it permeates so much of our time. And then well, for me, when I was younger in ministry, a little, than I am now, it would rob me of my personal time with God, because I would spend the day, bi-vocational, working full time, just trying to punch the clock and get that done, feed my kids, take care of my wife and love her, and, make sure I'm not neglecting her, all the different things that you hear, all the scary horror stories from ministry
yes.
of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, focusing so much on that it'd be 2-3 days. And I've studied from a sermon, and done the checklist, but there was that personal time. I allowed all of those things to rob me. And over the past several years, honestly, I've just went to a men's retreat at the Wilds in Brevard, North Carolina, and the pastor there that preached that week, man, he really helped me just understand, if you don't have that personal time and that time of refreshing. So, and you don't have to get away. You don't have to leave ministry to have some refreshing. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just wake up 15 minutes more earlier than the kids do,
Yeah.
and go find you a quiet spot, sing a hymn or sing a song to the God, and then get in the word and read his word. And so I would tell the younger me, um, what my old senior high Sunday school teacher, don't be a knucklehead just because things are hard. you know, you gotta just trust God in it. He's still there. Just lean on him more, and stop letting the circumstances rob you of that opportunity to lean on
Mm,
him more.
that is
Yeah.
so wise.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Where were you 30 some years ago when I planted a church and led that church as a senior pastor for 13 years? I could have
Yeah.
used that wisdom.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're watching or listening, it's Two Pastors Unplugged, and I'm talking with Pastor Nate Browning. He is the lead pastor at Calvary Baptist Church. Hey, this guy, I think he's wise beyond his years. This guy. So if you need some wisdom, you need to connect with him.
My
CBC.
wife might disagree with that.
That's funny.
Yeah,
That's funny
just
right there.
teasing. Yeah.
CBCHiawassee.com.
Amen.
I want to we're going to go ahead and end the podcast here, but I would love to have you back, because I want to
Amen.
talk more about, there's so much wealth on the inside of you, and you're not parroting. What I see is you're just not parroting things. It's done a deep work in your heart and your soul, and it's your lifestyle. You may not have it all 100% together, but
Oh no.
you're doing really, really good. And I would love to pick your brain about some more stuff. And one of those things, and God bless you for being a bivocational pastor. Years ago, when I started leading, I was on staff at several churches, but when I planted a church, it wasn't a denomination; it was non-denominational. It was a movement,
So,
but it was looked down upon if you worked outside of the ministry. And I
right.
think that is so wrong. If I
Yeah.
had to do it again, I would, and I ended up working part-time anyway, but God bless you for what you're doing but there's so many pastors out there in your shoes. They got a church that's growing but they're still having to work a bivocational thing and they're trying to juggle family, vocation, ministry. There's just not enough hours in the day. And you know what? If God gave you 48 hours in a day, Nate, you'd fill up those 48.
100%.
Yeah. And that's what I was always told. It said, well, you know what? If you had 48 hours, you just fill it up with something. Well, you're right. I mean, work. I'm not talking about sitting around playing, Nintendo or something. I'm talking about, real work of the ministry. So God bless you. And I'd love to dig into that. How does someone become successful in that and stays? I mean, there are some pastors, they are bivocational their entire lives and are okay with it. And they're fruitful in their ministries, etc., and their families. But I'd love to spend some time with you again. If you're up for it, I'd love to have you back. I think you're an amazing man. And I'd say that even if you weren't on the screen. I think God has just done a huge thing. Blessings to your family as well, your sweet children and your amazing wife. Hey, check out, if you go to Hiawassee, have a good time, but go to this church. I want you to go see Pastor Nate, Calvary Baptist Church. And if you're watching, you can see the scroll, cbchiawassee.com, and watch some of his stuff. Listen to the podcast that he has. It is good stuff. Thank you, Pastor. Yeah. Love you to pieces. Pastor Nate, thanks, we're going to have another great pastor on the next Two Pastors Unplugged. So join us. Don't forget to share this. You can share it and tell folks all about it. And watch another pastor next week on Two Pastors Unplugged. I'm Rick Probst. Till next time. See ya. That's a wrap of this episode of Two Pastors Unplugged. But hey, don't stop here. You can click the next video and the next one and the next one. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel and to the podcast, just search Two Pastors Unplugged on your favorite app. And we want to connect with you during the week. So go to @FaithTalk Atlanta, and we are everywhere across the board. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.